Okay, welcome again to the February edition of the SFPDM and PDD Modernization Outreach Call. As I mentioned, I'm Renee Justbuddy, and I work on the customer experience team within the Office of Securities and Operations here at Ginnie Mae. Today, I'm joined by the SFPDM adoption team and several SMEs that are here to share updates and provide highlights on SFPDM adoption. And of course, we're here to answer any questions that you all may have. And I'm sure I'm going to get this question in the chat. This presentation will be made available to everyone at the end of today's call. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our agenda. On today's call, there are three different topics that we want to address with you. We've shared the adoption timeline with you before, but today we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into where we are to date with SFPDM adoption and the path forward. Then we're going to share some current status updates and metrics around adoption and where we're going and with the PD. And then after that, we're going to go to the release of the PDD specifications, where Nicole Jackson is going to provide an update on the new PDD 3.0 specification release. Yes, I see your question. The agenda and the entire presentation is going to be shared at the end of today's call. Okay. So after Nicole has provided information about the new PDD specs, the new PDD specs, we're going to pause there for questions. And then towards the end of today's call, we're going to share some next steps and training resources and materials that are available on ginniemay.gov. And then lastly, we will open the call up for questions and a Q&A session. Next slide. Okay. As I mentioned, this slide may look somewhat familiar to you all if you've joined any of the listening sessions that we posted over the last couple of months. On this timeline, we've identified key target dates that we want to draw your attention to. So back in January of last year, an APM was published announcing the start of the 18-month transition to SFPDM and the MISMO compliant PDD. Then in April of last year, we rolled out the SFPDM application to all single-family and manufactured housing issuers. So where are we now? Earlier this month, a modernization bulletin was published announcing the release of the 3.0 PDD specifications. And those specifications included minor updates to the PDD that Nicole Jackson will touch on later during today's call. Beginning next Tuesday, February 21st, the SFPDM adoption team will begin what we are calling the case management phase of adoption, where we will be reaching out to individual issuers that have either not yet communicated a target adoption date or have not yet successfully pooled in SFPDM. Later this year, on March 31st, new enhancements are going to be released to align SFPDM and BTT with those new PDD specifications and new Ginnie Mae replatforming, extended term, and e-indicator products. And then you'll see notated by the star at the end of the timeline, the end of the 18-month adoption period, which we're targeting for July of this year, where issuers will be required to deliver single-family and manufactured housing pools in SFPDM, either via a manual entry or with a PDD import. Okay, next slide. Okay, now let's take a look at some adoption metrics, which have come about as a result of Ginnie Mae accomplishing some key adoption milestones, of course, thanks to you all, with the transition from Ginnie Net to SFPDM. So to date, the total amount of OPB issued or transferred pools in SFPDM is a little over $5 billion. So that's wonderful. And as you will see that we have about 1,600 plus pools that have been either issued or transferred in SFPDM. And 17% of those issuers are using SFPDM, and 32% of those issuers have tested in the VTT. So here at the bottom of this slide, you're going to see some feedback that we've received from the users of the application. So just so that you all who have not yet begun pooling in the tool, you can see some of the other issuers, what they are saying. It's being said that the application is easy to use and it's intuitive. And as one issuer put, it is quote unquote, easy peasy. And the enhanced end user experience is said that issuers are enjoying using the application in comparison to JennyNet, as it is not a menu-based application. And issuers are also finding value in seeing where they are in their pooling process with the skittles that are in SFPDM. And they like the overall visibility into the pools in the tool. Issuers are also leveraging the VTT to facilitate SFPDM adoption, and they find it useful. They find it useful with the error messages that are displayed that allows users to effectively identify and address any file issues. And so, of course, with positive feedback, we've also received some constructive feedback. So, and we've also received questions about how to resolve issues in the application. So in the instance that issuers encounter system issues in SFPDM or VTT, please do know that the adoption team has been sure to reply with workarounds and fixes. And if you are someone who has either called or submitted an email to the mailbox and you have yet to receive a response, please know that our help desk agents and the folks that are here to help navigate you through the application and any of the issues that you may have or any questions that you have are definitely working diligently to get to your questions and help resolve any issues that you may have if we haven't done so thus far. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to pass the baton over to Nicole Jackson.
Thanks so much, Renee. Appreciate that. I'm Nicole Jackson. I'm the lead for the pool delivery dataset adoption effort from the Office of Enterprise Data and Technology Solutions here at Ginnie Mae. Today, I'm going to share a little bit about the updates that we've made to our pool delivery dataset specifications. So our latest version of the pool delivery dataset is version 3.0. And it was released or published on ginniemay.gov on February 2nd of this month. So it is now out on our modernization initiatives page on ginniemay.gov and available to all of you to download and use if you so choose and deliver reperforming or extended term loans. The effective date of our applications will actually start to utilize or be available to utilize the pool delivery dataset version 3.0 at the end of March. So around March 31st, SFPDM and the VTT applications will be available and able to process the 3.0 version of the pool delivery dataset specifications. And if you are an issuer that transacts reperforming and extended term pools with Ginnie Mae, you would be required to use that new 3.0 PDD version by the end of the adoption period, the 18-month adoption period. So next, let me just share, I think I've kind of shared that already, what some of the specific updates are to the pool delivery data set. We introduced the new products, reperforming loans and pools, extended term pools. We also added a couple of new data points, total monthly income amount and e-note indicator. And the new PDD version also will no longer allow the usage of LIBOR as an index type or the accompanying LIBOR pool types. Those will no longer be valid. Also, we've also modified the conditionality of a couple of data points that were in containers, so that if the data point itself is not required, then that container is no longer required. So that'll clean up some of our XML schema work. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. So first, before I move on to any other slides, are there any questions about the slide that I just shared? The changes, I think we've communicated those pretty thoroughly the last few months, but if you do have a question and you're dialed in from a computer, please raise your hand. If you've dialed in from your phone, we ask that you press *9. If you're typing in a question, please use the Q&A in the Zoom application. So are there any questions that we want to address at this point in time?
Yeah, Nicole, we have 2 hands raised right now.
Okay, so then I think you just need to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, the first one is Brent. Jay, are you with us?
Hello, Brent. Have you unmuted yourself? Oh, okay, that was an accident. The next hand raised, was there a question, another question?
Yeah, it was from Christina.
Christina, do you have a
Hi.
question? Hi.
Hi. I'm not sure if this would come up later, so I figured I'll just ask it now. The 11705 and 11706 text files from GinnyNet, when will we be no longer able to get them?
You will always, I don't want to say always, but you will be able to get all of the pools that you have submitted through GinnyNet will continue to be available for you to get 11705 and 706 for those same historic pools. That's not going away. So if you submitted pools through GinnyNet, the 11705 and 706 will continue to be available to you for those historical pools.
Okay, and then I think currently pools that are being submitted in SFPDM, we're able to get through GinnyNet right now. When will that expire?
I do not have a date for that. But it will continue to be available in SFPDM. So pools that you've submitted in SFPDM, you can continue to get the 11705 and 706 from SFPDM. And
But in
pools that
the
you've submitted through GinnyNet, you can get the 11705 and 706.
okay, because we have a project open to be able to convert the XML files with the pool data. And I just want to be able, need to know when we have to tell them that the project needs to be completed, like before. We will
Hey,
only have
Nicole,
the
why
XML.
don't you scroll back to the timeline, because the timeline is based on an APM that was released in January 2021. And it's the best information that we have right now. So right now, the expectation is that issuers should be able to pool in SFPDM by July 31st of this year, based on the release of the APM in January of 2020. That says 2022. It's 2021, you guys. 2021. So to the extent that you need a target to aim for, I would say that's a pretty darn good target.
By the end of July.
Yes, and if there are going to be any updates in that space, they'll be announced via an APM.
Okay, I am shooting to have them, work it out before then, but just in case, you know what I mean? We need a hard stop.
Yeah, I totally get you.
Okay.
Yeah, any updates are going to be actually, regardless, we will be issuing an APM between now and that date to clarify exactly what the process is going to be for winding down out of JittyNet and for pooling activities. And so be looking for that APM. We're hoping, you know, April-ish.
Okay,
There's some dependencies. I can't commit to that date, but April-ish, late April is when we're hoping to have a new APM out, and it'll clarify that timeline. But the best information that we have right now and what we've asked folks to march towards is that July date, which would align with the publication of that APM in January of 2021.
okay, thank you.
You got it.
Yeah, I think it's 2022, Letitia, but that's fine. That's 18 months. So I think we're good.
Oops, sorry.
No worries. Anything else? Any other questions?
I don't think we have any more hands raised. Actually, yeah, another one just came up. Patricia, are you still with us?
Oops, are you guys hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. Hey, Letitia, on the last point in terms of the adoption period, so is it August 1st we need to be ready to pool in SFPDM, PDD, or we need to be pooling in the month of July?
No, I would say it would be August 1st as of today's, you know, APM publication. Basically, that July 31st date is letting you know when we intend to cut over to use of the PDD and, you know, SFPDM exclusively. So the current guidance out there is that July 31st date, which would mean effective the next day, you would not be pooling in JittyNet any longer. I will, you know, in full disclosure, let you know that we're assessing market conditions and issuer adoption to figure out if that is the best date still. We would not make it any earlier, I promise you that. But you definitely at this point need to be aiming for that July 31st date, which means you'd begin pooling in SFPDM no later than August 1st, if you can. The consequence, if we decide to cut over on August 1st and no longer allow pooling activities in JittyNet, is that you would have to manually enter any pool submissions in SFPDM from that point forward. So again, I want you to know that we are constantly assessing what's going on in the market. So we're not doing this in a vacuum, and the final dates will be presented in that April, late April APM. Did that answer the question, Patricia?
It did, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
All right. Are there any other questions we need to address in the Q&A?
Yeah, there's one
Read
question from,
off.
there's one question from Stephanie Smith. Her question is, when will the 11706 with data be available on SFPDM reports? She's saying that right now, only the 11706 without data is showing, and she still needs to go to JittyNet to get the 06 with data.
That does not sound right, Stephanie. 11706 forms and 11705 are both available in SFPDM. So if you're having that issue, please email us at the MISMO mailbox, JennyMay_MISMO_support at HUD.gov so that we can address that issue for you. But it should be available for sure.
All right. And then we have a couple more questions in the chat. As a reminder, folks, if you could please put your questions in the Q&A for functionality purposes for the webinar, that would be very much so appreciated. But for now, we do have two questions in the chat. And one, it's about the 05 and 06 again. And the question is there a way to print all pools on the 11705 and the 11706 in SFPDM? Right now, their only option they found is to print one by one.
Yeah, so we do have that enhancement targeted for end of March. So that's coming soon.
All right, thank you, Constantine. And then the last question in the chat says, there are, I think that just might be a comment, I'm sorry. There's another question that says, will there be a loan level export function?
I don't know that that has been requested as an enhancement, but that's something we can look into. Helen, if you're interested in that, we'd love to chat with you a little bit more to find out exactly what your needs are and your requirements are around that. I know we do have some extra reports in SFPDM, but I don't know that they're loan level only. But we can talk about that if you would like to send us that enhancement request through our mailbox. We can talk about that offline.
Yeah, so there will be, I just want to add, I mean, there will be
Mhm.
also Excel-based reports like pool data and loan data. But I'm not sure if this person was referring to XML export, which also, you know, when you export XML, it comes out with all the pools and loans that are under it in one file.
And she added clarity that she was looking for Excel. Okay, thank you, Helen. Any other questions?
There
There's
are
a
no,
comment in the Q&A from Eric, and I just want to know if it's more of a comment for the team to take back and be aware of. I just want Eric to know that we've gathered that comment.
Thanks, Letitia. All right, let's move on to the next slide. We just went over the PDD updates. All right. So here are some next steps that I'm sure you've heard from us plenty of times before. But for those of you who are not yet using the single family pool delivery module, we just want to remind you that if you are a manual entry issuer, you can start using SFPDM right now. If you have access to our JennyNet application, then you should have access to SFPDM and you can make the switch. Also, last month on January 19th, we did have another single family pool delivery module demo for our manual entry issuers. And that recording of that demo will be made available shortly. It has not yet been posted, but will be shortly. But we do have other recordings for SFPDM trainings that we've given in the past underneath issuer training and training recordings. So there are other SFPDM training recordings that you can utilize until we release that latest one. For issuers who are delivering via a PDD import, we're asking you to engage with your internal technology teams and or your software vendors where applicable, and make sure you are in line or in the queue for their release of their PDD software for when it becomes available, so that you can begin testing in the VTT and then be submitting your files through SFPDM. We have asked that we want you guys to keep an eye out. Hopefully, if you've gone to our jennymay.gov website and gone to the bottom of any of those screens, you can subscribe to notifications that we send out, and be on the lookout for another live VTT demo that we plan to have sometime next month. And for the software vendors who may be on the call that support our issuers, we're just asking you to prioritize the PDD development in your applications, in your software, if you can, please. And we ask that you actively assist issuers in upgrading to that latest software when it's available, and assist them through testing and the validation and testing tool. And at the bottom of the screen, we have some support information for our issuers and our vendors if you have any other questions. We have our Jenny May customer support phone number and our 2 help mailboxes, support mailboxes, one for the pool delivery data set and the validation and testing tool, and one for the SFPDM application itself. So for PDD and the VTT, you can go to JennyMay_Mismo_support at HUD.gov. For SFPDM specific questions, you can go to JennyMay1 at bnymellon.com. Next slide, please. And then here is a listing of a bunch of resources that we've tried to make available to our issuers and vendors. Obviously, we've recently released the latest version of the PDD specs. So those are now on our website under modernization initiatives, as well as the latest PDD implementation guide and the applicable appendices. And as usual, you can find on that same page the PDD quick guides on a couple of specific topics that we get a lot of questions on, frequently asked questions, and a ULDD PDD common data points reference. And for the VTT, we also have a user manual to assist you in training and assist you in testing the PDD you may have developed so that you can ensure that the XML structure and schema align with the PDD as it should, and that you pass the business rules applicable to the data that you're delivering. So we have a user manual, recorded trainings that we've given in the past, presentations as well as quick reference cards. And once you get the presentation, this presentation after our modernization outreach call, the headings, the PDD, VTT, and SFPDM headings on this screen will be hyperlinks that will take you directly to those locations on our jennymay.gov website. And as well as for the SFPDM application, we also have a user manual, training recordings, presentations, business rules, errors and warnings guide, and additional frequently asked questions. So a wealth of information here for you guys at your fingertips to use at your own convenience. Next slide. That was it. So I'll hand it back over to Renee to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Nicole. So again, as we did at the end of the PDD spec release slide, if you have any questions, feel free to follow any of the instructions here on this slide. If you've dialed in from your computer, please click the raise your hand icon at the bottom of your window to indicate that you have a question. If you've dialed in from your phone, you can press *9. And then once we've identified you as a caller, you can press *6 to unmute yourself before speaking. And if you're the shy type and do not want to ask your questions on the phone, please click into the Q&A section and type your question there. So first, I'll start off by asking Malika if we have any hands raised.
I don't see any right now. Well, Helen, your hand is raised, but is this from before? Not sure, so I'm just gonna allow you to speak. Helen, are you still with us?
I do see that she has put some questions in the chat, so maybe we can just read those for her. Helen, if you'd like to elaborate on any of those, please feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, okay, she's having trouble unmuting herself. All right, no worries. Okay, so in the chat, Helen has written, when loans fail to import, SFPDM does not provide the loan number and the reason loan failed import. They have to import the pool into JennyNet to find the loan that did not import and the edit of why it failed. Can anyone respond to that comment? Or would you like to take that offline? Or I see Constantine, you unmuted.
Yeah. Well, we could, we'll need more details, but overall, if loan fails to import, it's, it's probably a structural issue with the XML. And that means that the application, cannot read the loan ID and anything under that section of the XML. That's potentially why, off the top of my head, why this issue would occur. Otherwise, any validations that are impacting loans are listed out in an edits report along with the loan ID. But we can, take this particular case offline to see exactly what the situation was.
And I would also add, Constantine, that maybe Helen could also take that file and submit it through the VTT, because if there are the structural errors that you're talking about, she should be able to identify those pretty quickly through the VTT, just to make sure that her structure is sound before she starts using SFPDM. So again, just make sure when you're testing your PDD files, you do so in the VTT and pass the first round structural validations first, and then the business rules in the second round before you start using SFPDM.
And we have another raised hand from Jennifer.
I'm sorry, just 1 second, Malika. So
Mhm.
I do see, Helen, that you've elaborated a bit on your comment. So as Constantine mentioned, he's going to sync up with you offline just to get some additional details so that you all can get to the bottom of this for you. Okay, you're welcome. All right, go ahead, Malika.
Yeah, Jennifer, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had a question about the manual entry. So my question is, can a lender go out and manually set up a pool out into the new system and then just upload their loans to those pools, like kind of like we do today with JennyNet? Or does the file have to contain all of the pool information in addition to the loans?
You can set up a pool header information manually, and there is a way to add loans to an existing pool in SFPDM, but it still requires you to build an XML file format to load those loans to an
Right.
existing pool.
Yeah. So
Yes.
if we were to set up a pool manually
Mm-hmm.
and then say, okay, we've set up the pool, now we want to
Mhm.
upload or import our
Yes.
loans with that information, or with all the information of the loans, and dump it into that pool. We can
Yes.
do that.
There is that capability. Yes, there is
Okay.
there's a separate XML. And if you look on our website in Appendix C, or I'm sorry, I think there's a pool delivery data set quick guide on loading loans to an existing pool. And yes, you can perform that function.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Malika, do we have any other hands raised?
Not at this moment, but there are some in the Q&A.
All right. So before I move through the other questions in the Q&A, I see that Colleen, you put in some additional information regarding Stephanie's question earlier. Just want to make sure that we address that before we move on. I want to thank you. You can either put yes or no in the chat. You had mentioned that you think that Stephanie was asking if there will be 11706 with data, and because there are two types of 1106 forms, one with data, one without, and that you were saying she was referring to the one with data. So Stephanie, were we able to answer that for you? Okay. All right. So our next question is.
I'm sorry, Renee. Let me just ask that if you have a specific question about a specific file that you're trying to import, we would ask that you would submit that to our Jenny May _Mismo_support@hud.gov email and provide us with the file. We really can't address specific questions related to specific files on this call. So let's stick with questions that have to do. Thank you very much. Letitia put the mailbox in the chat. So if you have specific questions related to a specific file, we really can't address those without actually having access to the file that you're trying to load and seeing the errors that you're receiving. So we won't be able to answer those on this call, but definitely feel free to reach out to us because we have a whole team of folks here who do this all day. We'll take your file, we'll run it through the VTT, identify the errors that are generated, and we'll even tell you how to fix the errors if you get errors like that. So please, let's take those offline and you can email us your actual file that you're working with and your question. Thank you so much. Anything else? Any other questions that are not file specific?
There is a question from Megan Zappel. She wants to know, where do they go to look at historic pool data that was previously submitted? And also if there's a way to go further back.
So as I mentioned earlier, if you submitted the file, the pool data through JennyNet, you would go to JennyNet to get that same historic data. If you submitted the files through SFPDM, you would go to SFPDM to pull the historic data associated with that delivery. So it depends on where you submitted the actual pools. If they were submitted through JennyNet, you can go to JennyNet to get them. Those will not go away. If you submitted them through SFPDM, you can go through SFPDM to get that historic pool information.
All right, and then someone would like to know if there's a job aid, or in our case, a quick reference card to see how to cure Ginnie Mae exceptions month over month.
So we do have, let me just make sure I understand your question. We do have a Ginnie Mae business rules, errors and warnings document on our website. If you go to issuer training and tools and resources, you can find the errors and warnings that you can potentially get by submitting files through SFPDM, and those should help you resolve any errors that you get through the VTT or SFPDM.
All right, thank you, Nicole. All right, are there any other questions? I don't. Malika,
Jessica,
are there
you
any?
said the link above does not work. What link are you referring to? Ginnie Mae Mismo support@hud.gov. That's the, not really sure.
So Jessica, that first link that you dropped is to the SFPDM user manual. I just clicked that one and it opened. So I'm guessing, and the other link is to a YouTube video for SFPDM. That one also opened. So it might be your firewall.
Are there any other questions that we need to address?
There are no more hands raised at the moment.
All right.
Okay, and nope, there are no more questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Okay, so we would like to thank you all for joining today's call. Again, as we mentioned earlier during the call, if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to Ginnie Mae customer support for PDD and BTT support and SFPDM support, and for You can also reach out to the support mailbox for PDD and SFPDM and VTT support. Everyone have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will talk again next month. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.